I want to bring in Rebecca Rose Woodland. She is a New York trial attorney as we continue to watch Todd Blanchard. We will behind the scenes with our producers. But I wanted to get back to one of the big headlines of the day, which is Don Lemon, the arrest of CNN's former anchor Don Lemon after participating in the storming the church in St. Paul, Minnesota, the city's church. Your overall reaction of this, many have reported, and we have reported here, that he is potentially facing violations of the FACE Act. What goes through your mind with that?
Look, Sean, what we saw was a violent intrusion into a church service. There are constitutional rights to protest. We all know that within this country, you absolutely have a right to protest, but you do not have a right to organize a violent protest that incites further violence. And I think what we're seeing is Attorney General Bondi, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanchard, looking at this and making a decision based on facts and evidence that we'll hear, of course, as things unroll, as we hear what the full indictment is. We're going to hear that there is a belief that Don Lemon was inciting. He was organizing a violent protest, not only to discuss or present their opinion about ICE, to go in to address a pastor who they believed was part of the federal immigration organization and the federal immigration aspect of these ICE endeavors in Minnesota. So when you're looking at that, you're looking at obstructing justice, you're looking at organizing in a violent way. These are issues that the federal government right now cannot manage. You cannot get involved violently protesting and preventing the Justice Department and ICE and all law enforcement from doing what they are there to do. They're there to do their work, and if you want to protest, you could do it peacefully from the sidelines.
Right. Let me show you Don Lemon's attorney, Abby Lowell, their statement, reading in part this quote: "The First Amendment exists to protect journalists whose role it is to shine light on the truth and hold those in power accountable." And control room, we're going to pivot really quickly to CNN's statement, which is AAA 23. So on the heels of Abby Lowell putting out his statement, now we have CNN putting out their statement. They said the FBI's arrest of our former CNN colleague Don Lemon raises profoundly concerning questions about press freedom and the First Amendment. The Department of Justice already failed twice to get an arrest warrant for Don and several other journalists in Minnesota, where a chief judge of the Minnesota Federal District Court found there was no evidence that there was any criminal behavior involved in their work. The First Amendment in the United States protects journalists who bear witness to news and events as they unfold, ensuring they can report freely in the public interest, and the DOJ's attempts to violate those rights is unacceptable. We will be following this case closely. Sure, and we're also following it. Everyone's following this case closely. But they go back to First Amendment and to being a journalist. I would actually push back even on calling Don Lemon a journalist. I mean, if anything, I think at this point he's an opinion commentator, has a podcast at this point. If you're calling him a journalist, pretty much anyone with an iPhone can walk into an abortion clinic and start rolling tape. That's not the case.
Right. I mean, Sean, what are we looking at? What's the definition of a journalist? And yes, does a journalist have First Amendment rights? Absolutely. But those rights are restricted. You do not have the right to violently inhibit ICE or federal law enforcement. And if the Department of Justice determined, and there is an indictment, he was arrested, that he did that, well, what is journalism? Journalism does have limits. Constitutionally, of course, you have a First Amendment right, but you don't have a First Amendment right to incite violence. And if the Department of Justice made a decision based on the evidence that he was involved in a conspiracy to incite violence, that is a different level of an issue. That is not now a journalist. That is a conspirator to inhibit law enforcement and ICE processes. So what are we looking at? We're looking at two possibilities, but his journalism and the First Amendment rights don't apply when you're inciting violence. you.